Okay, imagine this. A single social media post, yeah. And it just blows up, sparking this huge national controversy, all connected back to a film about, like, major historical social reformers.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened with Anurag Kashyap recently.
Right. The director, famous for films like Gangs of Wasseypur, Black Friday, pretty gritty stuff, and he himself has some strong opinions.
He definitely does. And this whole thing spiraled out of his online activity promoting this biopic, Fooly.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack this whole situation. We're talking about Kashyap's comment about the Brahmin community, the really disturbing death threats that followed, and how it's all affecting the release of Fooly.
hmm It's a complex situation
Hmm.
involving caste, censorship, social media, lots of layers.
Yeah, our mission here is really to give you some clarity, some context. Go beyond just the headlines and the social media noise.
Try and understand the deeper issues at play. Basically a shortcut to getting properly informed on what's a pretty significant cultural moment, actually.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The inciting incident. This was around April 17th, 2025, right? Kashyap's on Instagram talking up Phule.
That's the time frame. And Phule, just for background, is directed by Ananth Mahadevan. It stars Pratik Gandhi and Patroleka.
And it's about Jyotirao and Savitribai Phule. These were incredible 19th century reformers in India, real pioneers fighting against caste, gender inequality.
Absolutely crucial figures. I mean, Jyotirao challenged the whole Brahminical social order head-on, and Savitribai, India's first female teacher. Groundbreaking stuff.
Opening schools for girls from marginalized communities, things that were seen as, well, really threatening back then.
Totally revolutionary, which, brings us to the film's own journey. Even before Kashyap's comment, Fule had already hit a delay.
Right. It was supposed to come out April 11th, then got pushed to April 25th. What was that about?
Well, reports suggest it was a mix of things. Issues with the CBFC, that's the Central Board of Film Certification, and also objections coming from some Brahmin groups.
Interesting. So there was already some sensitivity around the film's content before Kashyap weighed in.
Exactly. It sets the stage. You can see Kashyap was probably feeling frustrated by this, the censorship, what he saw as maybe a denial of caste issues.
And that frustration seemed to boil over on Instagram. He posted something questioning the whole process. Yeah.
He did. And then came this specific exchange. A user taunted him, saying something like, Brahmins are your fathers, mess with them, they'll burn you. Really aggressive stuff.
Wow. Okay. And Kashyap's response?
Well, it was explosive. He fired back, I'll urinate on Brahmins, any problem.
Oh, okay. That's direct.
Extremely direct
Hmm.
and deliberately provocative, you have to say. That comment just lit the fuse online instantly.
I can imagine the fallout must have been immediate.
Absolutely fierce. People immediately jumped on it, calling it castiest, derogatories, inflammatory, all the labels.
And then it moved beyond just online anger, legal action.
Yeah, pretty quickly. An advocate, Ashutosh J. Dubey, who's linked with the BJP in Maharashtra, filed a complaint in Mumbai, called it hate speech, demanded an FIR.
An FIR, right? A first information report. So a formal police complaint.
And another similar complaint was filed in Delhi, too. So serious legal moves citing hate speech laws.
Which really highlights that whole tension, doesn't it? Free speech versus hate speech. Where's the line?
It's right at the heart of this. But then things took an even darker turn.
How so?
Kashyap came out publicly saying he, his daughter Aliyah, his family, friends, colleagues, they started receiving death threats, rape threats, horrific stuff.
That's just awful. Completely unacceptable. Whenever you think of his comment, threats like that are just criminal.
Totally beyond the pale. It shows how quickly online anger can escalate into something genuinely dangerous and terrifying for the people targeted.
Did Kashyap respond to the backlash? Did he apologize?
He did post something on Instagram around April 18th. He called it an apology, but it was specific.
How do you mean?
He apologized for the hatred his family was getting because of, as he put it, one line taken out of context. But he explicitly said he wasn't taking back his own statement.
So, regret for the consequences, maybe, but not for the original comment itself.
That's how it reads. Like he still stood by the frustration behind it, perhaps, even if the expression was problematic.
And then he doubled down. I heard he showed the original exchange again.
Yeah, on his Instagram stories. Shared a screenshot of the user's taunt and his reply, adding a caption about the context being missed.
Almost like trying to reframe it, or at least make sure people saw what prompted his response.
Exactly. Highlighting the reactive nature of it all. Look what was said to me first, that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's circle back to Phule itself. To understand why this film, even before Kashyap's comment, was potentially controversial. Tell us more about the Phule's work.
Well, their entire life's work was a direct challenge to the 19th century caste hierarchy. They fought for education, for social rights, for lower castes and women, explicitly criticizing the dominance of Brahmins in society and religion at the time.
So, depicting that history accurately could inherently involve showing conflict and criticism related to caste roles back then.
Precisely. Their legacy is the struggle against that system.
Mm.
And telling their story involves portraying that struggle.
Which brings us to the objections raised against the trailer by groups like the Akhil Bhartiya Brahmin Samaj. What specifically didn't they like?
Their main issue seemed to be the portrayal of Brahmins. They felt it was overly negative. One specific example cited was a scene showing a Brahmin boy throwing cow dung at Savitribai Phule.
Okay.
The argument, articulated by someone from the Hindu Mahasangh, was basically, it's unfair to only show the bad things Brahmins did. A call for, I suppose, a more balanced historical view, though what that means in this context is debatable.
Right. They felt it was a caricature, maybe, reducing a whole community to negative actions.
That seems to be the core concern, a sensitivity about historical representation and potential stereotyping.
And the CBFC, the censors, they got involved too. They gave it a U certificate, right? Universal viewing.
Yes, a U certificate was granted, but with required cuts. They demanded the removal of specific caste terms, Mahar, Mang, Peshwai.
Really? In a historical film about caste reformers?
Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? They also asked to change a phrase, 3,000 Sal Purani Gulami, 3,000 years of slavery, to Kai Sal Purani Gulami, many years of slavery, softening the language, essentially.
And the filmmakers complied with these edits.
Apparently, yes, they made those changes.
But then they still postponed the release from April 11th to the 25th.
Correct. The stated reason was to allow time for dialogue with the groups who had raised objections, an attempt to engage, perhaps preempt further conflict.
Okay, now Kashyap's frustration makes a bit more sense. He sees a film about anti-caste heroes getting censored on caste references, facing objections, getting delayed.
And that's when he started asking some pointed questions publicly. Like, how do these groups even see the film before release to object to it? He questioned the CBFC's logic, too.
Yeah, he mentioned something allegedly said during a screening of another film, Act 2, about the caste system being eradicated.
That was a key point he raised. He claimed someone from the CBFC said the caste system had been ended by Modi-ji, the prime minister.
Wow. If that's true.
If true, it's a remarkable claim. And Kashyap used it rhetorically, asking, well, if the caste system doesn't exist anymore, then how can these groups object based on Brahmin identity? What does Brahmin even mean then?
It definitely exposes a potential contradiction in the official stance versus the reaction to the film.
Absolutely. It puts the spotlight right on that tension.
And like you said, this isn't happening in a vacuum. Fooly isn't the only film facing these kinds of hurdles.
Not at all. We've seen other films, Punjab 95, Tease, even Act 2, apparently running into censorship issues when they touch on sensitive social or political themes. It suggests a broader pattern.
A pattern of, what, resistance to certain kinds of stories?
Perhaps. A resistance to narratives that challenge established power structures or delve into uncomfortable historical or social realities. It definitely raises questions about artistic freedom.
But we should also, acknowledge the viewpoint of the groups objecting, the desire not to be painted with a broad, negative brush based on history.
That's fair. Historical representation is complex. Jyotirao Phule himself wrote critically, like in Gulamgiri, but understanding that historical context is vital. No community wants to be stereotyped.
And the film's director, Ananth Mahadevan, insists the full film is more nuanced, that people reacted just to a short trailer.
He did say that. His point is that judging the entire film based on a 2-minute glimpse is potentially misleading.
Which brings us back again to the CBFC. If the official line allegedly is that caste is gone, why sanitize caste words in a historical film about fighting caste?
It's the central contradiction, isn't it? It fuels suspicion about the motives. Is it about social harmony or avoiding difficult truths, or maybe even favoritism as some groups get early access? It looks inconsistent at best.
And then there was the social media reaction, just a complete storm.
Oh yeah, platforms like X, formerly Twitter,
Yeah.
just lit up, totally polarized.
Yeah.
You had supporters praising Kashyap, saying he was speaking truth to power,
And the other side.
condemning him for hate speech, calling it unacceptable, dangerous rhetoric. Even Union Minister Satish Dubey weighed in, condemning the comment.
So politicians getting involved too, it really blew up.
It became a major flashpoint. But again, amidst all that noise,
The threats. We have to keep coming back to that. The threats against his daughter, his family.
Absolutely crucial. Whatever the debate about his words, those threats are criminal acts. Full stop. And it's not the first time his daughter Aaliyah has faced online abuse, which makes it even more disturbing.
He even pleaded publicly, didn't he? Something like, abuse me, spare the women.
Yeah, muji gali du, oraton ko bashtu. A desperate plea, really, highlighting the horrific nature of the threats targeting the women in his life.
At the same time, we can't really skirt around Kashyap's original comment either. It was crude. It was designed to provoke.
No doubt about it. It wasn't exactly diplomatic or aimed at fostering constructive dialogue. It was raw, aggressive, and undeniably offensive to many.
So that's the tightrope, isn't it? Freedom of speech versus inciting hate. Does an offensive comment justify threats? Clearly not. Does it justify legal action for hate speech? That's the debate.
And the flip side, if you just ignore comments like that, does it normalize that kind of rhetoric? Where is the line drawn? It's incredibly difficult.
So stepping back, why should someone listening care about this whole saga? What's the bigger picture here?
Because it's not just about one filmmaker or one film. It taps into fundamental issues in India today. Caste is still a reality. It shapes politics, culture, lives.
So Phule isn't just entertainment, it's reflecting these ongoing societal tensions.
Exactly. It's a mirror to how India confronts its past, its inequalities. The whole controversy forces us to ask uncomfortable questions.
Like, why does a historical film about reformers cause such a strong reaction now? Why the immediate jump to censorship or threats instead of debate?
And what does that say about how far society has actually moved beyond caste if discussing it historically is still so fraught?
Even Kashyap's approach, however abrasive, maybe it forces conversations we need to have even if they're uncomfortable.
It's possible. Sometimes disruption, even provocative disruption, can crack open subjects that are otherwise kept under wraps, though the way it happened here clearly had deeply negative consequences too.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. We had Kashyap's inflammatory comment, the terrible threats that followed, the underlying controversy around the film Phule itself, its subject matter, the censorship, the objections, and these broader questions about free speech, caste, and historical narratives in India today.
And Foole's release is now pushed to April 25th. The filmmakers hope for dialogue, but as you said, dialogue shouldn't mean silencing important stories.
Absolutely. It's crucial that these histories get told.
Finding a way to discuss them openly, honestly, even when it's difficult, is key.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe. How do we create spaces where we can talk about these really sensitive things, history, inequality, identity, without it descending into threats and censorship?
Yeah, is it possible to disagree, even strongly, without dehumanizing the other side, without resorting to violence or trying to shut down the conversation entirely?
Something to think about. The power of stories, how we tell them, how we receive them, and, our own part in these dialogues.